No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to be going over the second part of this article that we started last Monday by Laura Otting. And we're talking about re-engaging a dissatisfied employee. And I think last episode was a little bit longer than than normal, but there was such an enormous amount of good content in this article, and I wanted to make sure that we touched on all of it. And so we talked about the fact that it's not about work-life balance; it's about work-life alignment, and we talked about trying to find ways to reshape employees' jobs to add more about what drives them and to accomplish their personal goals. The other two components to this article that I think are really important, and I think that a lot of leaders really miss the boat on this. Not that they fail, it's just they don't think about them as often as maybe the first two elements of it. The first one is engaging your employees in the recruiting process. And in jobs that I've worked at, the engaging that has been done to me in the recruiting process has typically fallen in one of two categories. Either I'm the leader and it's my job to fill spots, so part of my job is naturally to be engaged in the recruiting process. I'm recruiting people, or the recruiting process is, hey, if you refer somebody to get work here, we'll pay you money if they're good quality and they get hired. So it's kind of like the onus is wholly on me to just do something if I either want to or if I want to be doing my job. And there's so much more to this than just one of those two categories. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I love that we're talking about it, because I think it's, in most places when you think about, people that get hired to an organization that you work for, you tend to meet them once they get hired. And again, unless you are referring somebody to come work there, you meet them when they get there. And because there's typically recruiters or there's leaders, and they handle all of the type of thing. And again, they should be the ones that are somewhat assessing talent and asking questions and finding people that align with the work that needs to get done, and maybe the value structure of the company, looking for people that fit in. Looking for people that fit in well, working through filters around diversity, inclusion, equity, that type of stuff. But I think that there's a big miss in either one of two things: either not including people that would work, peer-to-peer. And again, I don't even know if that's something that you can do, is include people that would be peers with an interview process. I think you can. Should be a problem with that. But I could also understand in some instances where maybe that would be tough, especially if you're not assessing for the same thing. You're not trained to be able to assess for talent, or you don't know the laws in regards to what questions you can ask, what questions you can't ask. So I understand that part of it. But at minimum, I think we missed the ball by not asking people what would they like to see in new hires that are coming in. What would they like to see in a peer? What are things that they feel, are skills that they would like to have on their team? Or, what are things that resonate most with them that could be helpful with a recruiter or leader as you're looking for talent? So I think that's a bigger part of, talking through the kind of this dissatisfied employee article is that, how are you including people in things like hiring and recruiting, even if it's just asking for their opinion up front, even if it's just asking them to what are the things of the job that now that you're here, you've realized maybe you weren't asked about or talked about or are on the job description that we should be thinking about and or assessing for, just having conversations to better include people in something like recruiting, I think would be super helpful in maintaining a level of engagement and bringing people along, especially on something that may not be a part of their day job.
Right. If you look at all the articles that I've seen on the questions that you should be asking during an interview as the candidate, when the person interviewing you inevitably says, "Do you have any questions for me?" All those articles say that a really great question to ask is, what does success look like in this role, both short-term and long-term? And I think a lot of people, if they are in a job right now, and they were to go back and look at the job description or look at the job description currently for the job they're doing, it may not wholly encompass what it looks like to be successful. There might be things that you as an employee have realized really have helped you be successful at your role, or things that you had to kind of summon within yourself or get better at that weren't listed as part of the job description, or that weren't listed as, what makes this role, what would make me successful in this role. But I've realized that, I really have to have this in order to be successful. If your employees know this information, getting that information from them not only will help in making sure that you're hiring the right people, but it will make sure that they feel like the process is something that they are a part of and not just something that's happening to them. This idea of making sure that the actual job description aligns with the position you're hiring for is something that Laura talks about in this article a lot, because a lot of times those job descriptions aren't updated very often. In fact, if it's a position where the title of the position hasn't changed, the description over time has evolved because the needs of the environment or the needs of the client or customer base or the COVID picture, like all these things, it can either a little bit or a lot contribute to the job description changing. And if you haven't updated that in a while, or your company hasn't updated that in a while, it could look a little bit different than what you actually say you're trying to hire to fill a specific spot. And so, having employees that feel like part of their responsibility or part of their part of something that they have impact over in their job is being able to actually say, you know what, now that I've done this job for 3 or 4 years, the next person that comes in to do this, now that we have an opening on the team, if I look at this job description, I mean, this is accurate, but it's not complete. And there's more to it than that. And if we could really get somebody in here, I've noticed that over the years, the people who could do this and this and this well were much more successful at this. And the people who couldn't do this and this and this well had a real tough time, or they struggled with this role, or they burned out quickly, or they left the organization quickly. So your employees have probably a better sense of what makes a successful employee in a particular role than maybe even you as the leader, because they do it every single day. And so hopefully you have some semblance of this, but engaging your employees in this process will definitely help with making them feel like they have more control over their job and more control over who they have to work with every single day. The other element she talks about in this, or the last element of this article, is connecting employees' work to a larger picture. And this is a big one, because I've said since the very beginning of this show that in a career conversation that I had a long time ago, I was asked 2 questions that really resonated with me, and I asked them in all of my career conversations with every employee when I'm having a like an annual review or any type of career conversation. 1, do you know why your organization exists on this planet? And 2, are you excited by that? So if the employee can't very quickly articulate why their company that they work for, that you both work for together, why it exists, number 1, and 2, that they are excited about why it exists. If you can't do that, this is going to be very difficult for you. If you can do that, that's just the entry level. That's just the prerequisite to have this conversation about now how do you connect their work to that larger picture. So they have to know it, but they have to know what the larger picture is. They have to be excited by that larger picture. And if they can say that, now it's your job to make sure that as much of what they have to do every day can connect to it.
I love that. But I also have I think about industries or places or jobs where maybe that's not so evident, or
sure,
places where people work because they need a job, or there's a lot of spaces that leaders may be dealing with where it's not like there's this great attachment to things like the world, the earth, green initiatives, customer service, like healthcare. There's a lot of spaces where, I immediately think of, what if you're a graphic designer that makes posters, for a company or whatever. Why do you exist? You're making promotional, say it's like you can say stuff like, we want to have a visual connection to the emotion of excitement and detachment of reality while entertaining yourself at a movie. And if the poster brings people in, you can paint that picture and you can have that large vision and you can kind of walk through that. But it can be difficult sometimes. So I also think that in spaces where maybe it's not as easy to connect the larger, their work to the larger work, I think in those spaces, you have to connect their work to the larger work of a team, or the larger work of the goal of the team, or the excitement of what's going on. Or sometimes you have to connect that work to the larger work of themselves and what they're looking to accomplish personally. So I always consider that, because I'm limited to my experience. I'm limited to what I do, and especially like in spaces like retail leadership and things like that. There's a lot of things that you do because you work in service of a customer. So like you can always point to saying you want to create amazing experiences, interactions, that whatever the thing is that we're selling, whether it's a home theater system for entertainment and bringing families together, or it's large appliances that allow households to operate and that type of thing, to personal computing, or to phones where it's not about just a call, but it's about working, creativity, connection across the world. Like there's all these things that happen in our specific industry that does make it a little bit easier, in my opinion, to tie it back into what this means to a customer. And then when you work for an organization, that many organizations are really good about, this is the space that we want to play in that world. I know that I'm limited to that perspective just because of what I've done for my entire career. So I always have to remember that if you're a leader on this podcast, or you're a leader listening to this podcast, you may work in an industry that either doesn't have that, or you may have to think about yourself. You may have to think about, like, is there something there that this company really stands for that maybe I'm not attached to, that I'm not seeing and excited by what the work is? And it's really hard to get your people there if you don't feel that, if you don't have the passion, if you don't feel that the work that you're doing as a leader in whatever industry or job it is, if you don't feel that there's this larger connection to the bigger work, or that you're making a difference, or that you're having some, longer lasting impact than just doing the thing that you're doing, that can be really difficult. So I think it does start there. Like that's something I just wanted to highlight. Like the leader themselves you have to honestly and genuinely feel that way. Otherwise, people will see right through it, and you're being inauthentic. And you're out there trying to sell the idea, but they're just like, you don't act like that. You don't feel that way. We don't read that from you. Like you have to be in that space to be able to work through something like this when you're trying to work with maybe a dissatisfied employee, because then the reality is, like, you're actually the dissatisfied employee, and if you are, it's hard to then make other people not dissatisfied.
Sure. You can't paint a different picture for somebody else if you're not. If you're in the same boat, trying to pretend like you're not. I agree with that. I will caveat it with one thing though, and that's that I think in a lot of jobs where that is the case, a lot of jobs where you can't necessarily say that you're saving the earth or curing hunger, or you're doing these kind of really bold or life-changing initiatives. If you're in a job like that, there are almost definitely that space that you play in is a space that a lot of companies play in. It's unlikely that you're in a very unique company and you're the only company who does this thing, and yet you also can't connect it to a something larger than yourself. If that's the case, sometimes the connection has to be, if this is the work that you do based on what you're good at, what aligns with your life currently, what allows you to accomplish the goals that you want to do, you can do this work for a lot of different places. So at the very least, you should be doing it for one where there are people in other parts of the organization who are working to do the things that you are passionate about. And if you can say that, then maybe part of your future is that you get to be working on those teams where you're making those changes yourselves, but maybe not. Maybe it's the kind of thing where you just want to make sure that the productivity you're putting out into the world, and that if you're making a paycheck, what you're doing is you're generating revenue and profit for an organization. So at the very least, shouldn't you want to be doing that for an organization who as a whole is working to do things that speak to you or that align with what you want to see for this world, or have this world be a better place? And so even if you're not actually doing it yourself, I do think it's possible for leaders to do that in that context of, like you talk about, you don't get to be part of this work directly. This is not what you do every day, but are you as close to it as you can be based on the work that you are qualified to do, are good at doing, and are being hired to do at this moment? Are you at least doing it for an organization that you can say, you know what, I'm proud of this. I'm proud of this work being done, even if I'm not necessarily on this team at that moment.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the job description that is formally published or produced by your organization for each of the roles that report up to you. And it could just be many people doing the same job, or it could be several different roles that you are the leader of. Look at all those job descriptions, and I want you to partner with all the people who report up to you. I want you to show them the job descriptions, because these are the things that they're doing right now. These are the jobs they're in currently. And I want you to ask them if they're accurate. I want you to ask them to go through it line by line and help you decide which of these items are exactly like it should be and which of them are just a little bit different or very different than what they actually are asked to do on a day-to-day basis. I'm not saying that you as the leader have the ability to formally change the job description your company puts out, but at the very least, it can inform your hiring decisions when it comes to who you go and look for when you're trying to recruit people in, or the questions that you may ask in an interview process to better align potential future candidates with the actual job description. And if you can go back to the employee and say, hey, based on your input on what these job descriptions are, I'm going to ask this question when it comes to the next interview. What do you think about this? Do you like this? Do you think this is a good question to ask that would kind of qualify this person to be able to do this element that you believe isn't in that job description and that it should be? Again, this isn't going to be something where you revamp the entire process, but these little tweaks that can happen will connect your employees more to the process. So not just meeting their new coworker, they feel like they had kind of a hand in filling the role with someone that they can help be successful.
Yeah, no, it's a great 1 minute hack, and I think it's this is such a critical part of building really great culture, which is why a lot of organizations and companies look for like referral programs and bringing people in, because they know that if you're working with people that if you've endorsed somebody to come work there, there's probably an alignment, especially if you're referring, you're taking referrals from people that are great performers that really do a great job at work. They tend to run in circles of people that also do great work and take things serious and are willing to come in and do a great job. So that's typically why you see a lot of that. And similarly, though, if you have that, or if you want to build on top of that, letting people go through that and share with you to understand and to make sure that you're also showing that as a leader, you're working in service of them, and that it's important to you that they know that who you're bringing to the company is not just, hey, trust me, I think they're great, and by the way, meet them, they're Bob. If it's not that, then it's like, hey, we've taken what you've shared with us, we understand that now, we're making these types of decisions, and here's somebody that I want you to meet that has that background or has that experience or, is bringing this to the table. That changes things dramatically, I think, when it comes to the, including part of the team and in really helping people to connect to the larger picture of what you're looking to achieve, because that really shows that what you're trying to achieve is building a great culture and building a space where their opinion matters and helps to shape the future of whatever the team might look like.
Yeah, I think also if your organization relies, or at least believes it relies on referring other people to work, if you rely on your employees to bring other employees in based on what you do, and you're not seeing a lot of that happening, chances are this is the case. Chances are the people who are not bringing other people in, if you consider them good employees, productive employees, honest, ethical people, and they're not bringing their friends in, if they're not telling their friends, hey, you know what, you should come work here, and taking advantage of whatever that kind of referral thing is that your organization has, if that's not happening, chances are they don't want to bring their friends in for a reason. Like, what is it that they see in this job where they're thinking, I'm not going to bring somebody in. I don't want them to get mad at me for saying they should come work here. So if that's not happening, that could be why. And going through these things, not just the two from today, but the two from last Monday, going through these things with your employees to re-engage them and help them be more satisfied with their work, the likelihood of them wanting to bring other high-quality people in to work with them will become a lot higher.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.